Hello, welcome to Talking Loud Urban Cannabis Conversations here on IntellectualRadio.com. I'm your host, Kiana Hughes, and today I'm going to be talking to Cyrus Renfrey Crosby, who is a conditional adult use cannabis dispensary licensee. And so we're going to get into a little bit of his experience, what it was like for him going through the process, as well as some obstacles that he's faced, some challenges, and then most importantly, just some lessons that he's learned throughout that entire ordeal, through this journey, which is still an ongoing journey. So welcome to Talking Loud, Cyrus.
Thank you. Kiana, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and have this conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You know, when I got there was a short video that your dad sent me that you were explaining just some of your frustrations with where you are in the process. And so before we get into those fully, what I would really like to do is just kind of start at the beginning. For our audience, though, let's just go ahead and set a little bit of context here. So you have a conditional license. What's the difference between a conditional license and an actual license? Or what does that mean, conditional?
Yeah, so a conditional adult use dispensary license grants a business an opportunity to build out a facility, and then once upon building out that facility and then passing an inspection conducted by the state to prove that they meet the requirements and are actually able to sell cannabis within the regulations, then they'll be granted a license to operate the business, which is adult use dispensary license.
Okay, so the conditional license, the condition is you actually have to stand up the business. You have to actually build it out, fund it, do all the things, turn it into an actual thing, and then they give you the license to now sell and operate that business.
Yep, you got it.
Yeah. And then that one is different. It's interesting because that's a little bit different for the dispensaries than it is for the other license types. The other license types, the craft grow, the transporter, the infuser licenses, you actually get those licenses, versus the dispensary, you have to get a conditional license first.
Yeah, that is a difference.
So tell me, why did you decide to apply for a license? Give me a little bit of your background and just kind of how did you come to that decision?
Sure. So I'm a professional engineer. I had an opportunity to work overseas in the oil and gas, construction, engineering space, or really just energy space. And through that process, I had an opportunity to see normalized cannabis culture up close in Den Haag, the Netherlands, or The Hague, where Amsterdam is. And through that, when I returned to the States and continued to go through my, consumption of media, it was very recognizable to me that there was this industry being stood up, and there was a lot of energy in this cannabis industry, this nascent industry, and there weren't people that looked like me really participating in that. So I was like, I want to get involved with that because I see that legitimate businesses can be ran, in a society that's functioning, at a high level without, any negative impact. So
Right. The sky didn't fall in. They had cannabis. It was legalized and nothing horrible was happening.
Yeah, nothing.
Good. So once you came and found out about the way things were changing here in Illinois, I assume you decided that you wanted to be a part of the conversation, or at least be in the mix with that. How did you? So it's not just you; you're a part of a team, right? So how'd you pull together your team?
Yeah, so it was, really my idea to get involved in this space and really, start getting interested in it and doing research and trying to figure out, a business plan to participate in the industry. And through doing that, I ended up moving from Texas back to Illinois, and then the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act was passed,
Hmm.
and then I approached a couple of friends of mine that I knew had credentials that would fit into a group of owners that wanted to participate in this sort of industry. So
Can you talk a little bit about those credentials? I like that you said that you paid attention to their credentials. What were the credentials?
yeah, uh, I read through the the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, and I understood that there was this requirement for um, social equity in there as a mechanism to improve your odds of getting a license. So
Hmm.
uh, I reached out to people specifically that I thought might fit that mode.
Okay.
So that's how I ended up bringing on board my two partners. Felton Cunningham is our 51% owner who meets that credential. Although, I think it's worth saying that all of us, and all, black people in America have been affected by the war on cannabis.
Right.
But, from a technical standpoint, he actually meets that. I like to think that I'm, just as affected, and so does my partner Zach. But regardless, that's why I brought him on board. And then Zach, he has MBA from Harvard, and he fits the mold again of someone that could bring a expertise and a perspective that I and our other partner we don't necessarily have.
And what was that missing piece?
That business
Gotcha.
acumen at a
Okay.
higher level. I like to think mine is pretty good, but I mean, it's Harvard, like
Good stuff.
where's Boston?
So I think one of the things that's important to point out is that the criteria for social equity were not race-based. So they didn't say anything about being black or Mexican or anything of that nature, but they did base it on where you live. If you lived in a disproportionately impacted area, according to their criteria, as well as if you were just as impacted or if you were related to somebody who um, had been incarcerated for cannabis or arrested or charged, any of those things. So just I want to say that just to clear up, because I know a lot of times, like, we think, of course, social equity, we think, black and brown people and so on, but you have to look at some of those other factors when you're pulling together your team. And the lesson to bring out of that is to make sure that your people fit the criteria, right? So that you out of the gate are getting the most amount of points. It's a little bit different now, the process, but let's talk about the process in general. So you did say, I heard you say a couple times that you read the law, that you read the CRTA. What else did you do to prepare yourself, or what did you and your team do to prepare yourself for the application process?
Yeah, I'd say that's absolutely by far the most important thing. When I got started, um, I I didn't really have like a backing of hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars,
Mhm.
or and it was my thinking that if someone wants to participate in this industry, they better either know a whole lot or they better have a whole lot of financial resources. So me being studious person that I am, I made it a point to learn as much as I could
Mhm.
to be able to participate. So I read the law, and I just can't stress that enough, how important that is as a component of trying to get involved in this industry, especially if you are limited in resources and you want people to take you serious. But beyond that, it was I did a lot of running around. So I went to some cannabis expos to try to get to meet people and see what was going on in the industry. And then I think the next most important thing I did was started to go to um, city council type meetings, and meeting, seeing what was going on at the legislative level, and seeing the multi-state operators and the different people that were lobbying for different things in the cannabis space, how those conversations were being had and structured, and then meeting people through that. And I think that was the biggest thing, because that kind of led me into being able to have conversations about uh, incubation programs, and then
Mhm.
finding potential partners to work with on that level in terms of business relationships. And so anyway,
Oh, good.
I'd say that that'd be the next thing that I did to kind of prepare us to try to put together the best application.
You mentioned being exposed to incubation programs, and I know when we talked previously, you mentioned that you had been in an incubator or in a business accelerator. Talk a little bit about what that. You don't necessarily have to identify what the company is, but talk a little bit about what that business incubator did for you. What was that process, or what was the purpose of that?
Yeah. So I'll before I say that, just backtracking just
Okay,
slightly. The other thing I did, which was related to us participating in the incubation program, was put together a business plan.
there you go.
And
All right.
I did that before I really got my partner Zach Addy to be serious about the venture, because he asked me to, if you want me to get involved with this, you got to bring me a business plan.
Mhm.
So I brought him a business plan, and a week from there, and then a few days after that, I told him, hey, we got an opportunity to pitch for an incubation program. So he saw how serious I was, and then
Right.
he took me serious, right? So to answer your question about what did the incubation program itself do for me, well, for our business, uh, we were able to tap into industry experts and their know-how, their experience, their intellectual property to help us put together a competent application. And that's the most that we got out of it. They did also deploy some funds for us, but it wasn't a amount of funds that I think is typical of most businesses that ultimately won licenses. We made it a point to be a small, scrappy team, really leveraging the the law, which grants us the opportunity to participate in programs like this, and then ultimately we developed relationships with many of the multi-state operators in this space, not just who we ultimately ended up in the incubation program. We had opportunities to be in many different incubation programs, so it was a bit of a vetting process that really any company could have did if they sought to do so, and that was a part of our plan and strategy. And then ultimately we decided to work with PharmaCann because they seem to have a narrow interest in working with just a few companies to deploy their resources in the most efficient manner.
Um, I think you're right about that. If I am not mistaken, PharmaCann was one of the few MSOs whose incubator participants did go on to actually be awarded licenses. As far as on the surface, right? I'm sure there's some that are below the surface that the multi-state operators are involved. But so it seems like they did a good job in terms of getting you all prepared for the process, or helping you actually write the application. Did they provide those kinds of resources? Any templates or anything of that nature?
Yeah, they provided templates, intellectual property, but I mean, I can't tell you. Even with that, like there was hours and hours and sleepless nights and so much time that our team put into it
Mm-hmm.
outside of being provided that intellectual property. I think if a company wanted to participate in this space, I'd say that relationship was the same that you get if you work with a consultant and you're competent and you care about your business. You're going to make sure that you put the work in to make sure that those materials give you the best opportunity to win a license, and not just submit whatever it is they gave to you.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't I mean so yeah, we definitely did the work to put ourselves in the best position to have a high scoring application.
I love that you said that, because what I really loved about your story, and just in talking to you previously, is that there was a lot of initiative. You took a lot of initiative. You were a self-starter, and you really kind of led yourself into and through that you're leading yourself through that process, and not just necessarily just waiting or just sitting back and taking, what's given to you, right? So you made sure you read the law and you made sure you had an understanding and you went out and, kind of involved yourself in the community to get some learning and build relationships that way. So that when you were in this incubator, like you said, you weren't just taking their templated, information and just passing it on or not reading it or not understanding it, but really putting your mark on it. And you had a business plan before you even started the incubator. Those are very important things, I think, to highlight is the amount of preparation that you did for yourself before you even got into it. So congratulations and kudos on that. So far, I feel like you've done all the all the right things and listening to your story. How did you so let's fast forward a little bit. You were awarded the license at some point. Your number comes up in the lottery. We won't get too much into the lottery debacle. But when you were applying, you had to choose a specific area to put your business in. You had to actually identify that and apply in a certain BLS region. How did you choose? Well, which one did you choose, and how did you choose that one?
Yeah, so we submitted an application for every region at various quantities.
Mhm.
We were given, again, a certain amount of money as participants in the incubation program, and we deployed those funds, most of them, in um, applying for licenses because we felt that the license itself was so valuable that we should use the money that any money we had to
Mhm.
apply, and there was no limit placed on the amount of licenses that you could apply for.
That's right.
For dispensaries. So that's what we did strategically, right? We spent a lot of sleepless nights thinking about reading the regulations and understanding the rules so that we could best have the best opportunity to have a chance to win a license, and again, that's what we did.
So back to the where you ultimately ended up winning. Okay, so you applied in all of them.
We applied in all of them.
Right. You ultimately end up winning in BLS Region 16,
Yep.
which is where?
They call it East Central Illinois. It's south of Champaign County. It's a 10-county region south of Champaign County. And then it goes from about the center point of the state over to the eastern border with Indiana.
Okay.
So it's not Chicagoland.
Yeah, it's a smaller town,
Smaller towns, much smaller towns. And from a technical perspective, they kind of none of them really meet the metric that the established cannabis dispensaries would use to apply when they're doing their citing for dispensaries, right? Like they use a population density ratio.
Mm-hmm.
So so everything about how you go about citing a business in this space is different than what is typically done in the space from what I understand, at least.
What do you know what kind of stuff they look at? I know they look at the number of people, but also things like the economics of the area, right? What are the median income of the people in the area as far as, how much money do they make? Are they going to have to spend on cannabis? Do you know any of the other like metrics that are involved in that?
I mean, we have our metrics that we used at that level, right?
Mhm.
That kind of what I mentioned was just something that we've heard, call it anecdotally in conversation with, different industry participants. But in terms of, the makeup of the communities and the different cities there, I don't know to what level they looking at stuff,
Mhm.
look into that stuff. I'm sure that they do. But for us, when we're putting, or any company, when they're putting together financial models and doing market research, you got to get to that level of granularity to understand, what your projections are and that. So
Yeah.
we have looked at that.
Gotcha. So here we are today. How's it going?
It's going. It's a lot of work. It's really challenging. I'll say that it's been a lot of it's been a lot of endurance that we've had to apply through, from getting a license, from not getting a license originally when the first, bunch of those were awarded, to hearing about the lotteries, to, learning that we were able to participate. So it's been just ebbs and flows, dealing with heartaches and heartbreaks and successes, and trying things and things not working, and other things working. And so trying to, you know, hold our team together,
Yeah.
and hold parties that we're working with accountable. So yeah, that's
I can imagine. So you and your partners, you guys are three young black men. What's the age range?
so so we're younger men. We're all in our 30s.
Okay.
uh
I'm gonna think
we'll
early to
actually
mid
all make
30s.
34 this year, all of us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Young black men under 35. Do they all have hair like you? Or
So one of my partners has locks, yeah, and the other is does not. He's clean shaven. He kind of
okay.
goes through cycles of clean
That's the
shaven and
Harvard dude.
a little fro, or a little nappy, I
Okay.
think is a more appropriate term.
And you know why I'm getting into this, because now I'm painting the picture, and I want to talk a little bit about what that the process of trying to find a location in East Central Illinois, in this very area that is different from Chicago, in this area that's very different from Chicago.
Yeah.
Talk to me about some of the challenges that you have had, or well, first of all, talk to me about what do you do to figure out, how to get this thing popping in East Central 10 counties, Illinois, however you put that.
How do you get things even started in
Yeah.
that area?
Yeah. What'd y'all do? Like,
Okay.
we won this license.
Okay.
Yay, we got it.
Okay.
And we said we're gonna put our business
Okay.
here.
Okay.
Okay. And now we gotta do something.
Okay. So the first, I mean, if no matter where you're going, you're gonna need to find a piece of real estate, right? So you got to find a real estate broker to help you find a piece of real estate. So that's really it. Regardless, that's kind of agnostic. That you got to do that no matter where you're looking.
Right.
So that was the thing that we did. Um, I I'd say any company would do the same. The kind of backtracking a little bit. Um, you talked about kind of like our visual presentation and how that might bode in this region, or even just in business in general. One of the things that I was told as a young professional engineer by a human resources person that was a vice president of the company, and her job specifically, she was a black woman, was to advise the executives, the C-suite of the company, on their professional development, right? And those were mostly white men in a very conservative industry. And I'll never forget, she told me, the more that you could be yourself in the context of business, the more successful you'll be.
Okay.
And I must say that is one of the things that allowed me to take my interest in the cannabis industry seriously, and then, you know, uh, come to establish a confidence in self and get rid of imposter syndrome, and realize that I could do anything that I set my mind to, regardless of what people thought about me. And I think, that's been kind of one of my guiding lights through this. Uh, so in terms of how we're received by the communities, I'll say, I mean, a lot of these communities, when the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act was passed, a lot of, just like any other law, when it's passed at a level of governance higher than the subordinate level, there has to be a reaction, right? And oftentimes their reaction is either to accept it or to not, if they have the option to do so. So a lot of these communities decided to prohibit cannabis right out the gate, and and then a few decided to accept it. And just like the kind of evolution of the industry itself over time, what you see is cannabis going from being a completely illegal substance in all states to something that has become accepted first in California, and then more states come online, and then the same thing happens within states. There's a state legalization, and then more communities come online after time. So because of that, I don't think all of it is necessarily racial. It's some of it is just people. Cannabis is a nascent industry that was previously illicit, and people trying to warm up to that. So a lot of the challenges that we have, through us working in this incubation program with PharmaCann, we know that they've had those same heartaches and heartburns also.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, so that's
So
that's
you wouldn't
really what it
say,
is. If there is some of that, right? Just like in any other space, in today's society, most racial stuff is undertones, right? So it's just a matter of how much you want to play into that or not. I choose to take the high road. The community that we're actually working with, they, I think their community has gone through challenges, and with the loss of industry and whatnot that's happening throughout Middle America. And I think the noble people in the community that want to, bring industry back and build it up recognize that cannabis is one of the few places where there's a requirement for there to be retail spaces, right? In this world where given the Amazon effect, retail the retail real estate industry is at a huge deficit.
mm-hmm.
And there's just so that there's opportunity there, although there's different things that have to be addressed in our specific community around siting and everything like that. There's still some opportunity there.
So where do you stand now as it relates to your location and establishing your location in this town? What's the name of the town? Or do you want to say that? You don't have to.
So we're not. So we had a site. This is our biggest challenge right now. We had a site. Ordinance was passed that didn't allow us to actually go through with finalizing that site and then doing a build out on that site. So because of that, I can't really say we're working in any particular county in this 10 county region because everything's on the table again now. So all the work that we've done trying to find a site, working with a broker, developing a plan, engineering drawings, all of that stuff for that site, budgets, everything, all that stuff's out the window, and we have to start again, find a new site, and do all that again. So,
and that's all stuff that you paid for when you start talking about engineering plans and architects and all of that.
Yeah, on some level, some yeah. I mean, I won't get into the details of our business arrangements, but we're sophisticated. We've been making sure that we are not getting nickel and dimed along the way. So we've I think that's kind of defining characteristic and trait of our operation is we're really challenging this industry to get away from that that out of the gate cannabis tax. Like, you are backed, y'all are working in this industry, it's worth so many billions. Well, it's not. I mean, we don't have billions of dollars. We're trying to apply intelligent, normal business practices to operate a legitimate business. So we're not going for the just random cannabis taxes. They have coined the term in the industry.
The green tax.
Yeah,
The green tax is there as soon as they hear that cannabis is involved, and there's this assumption that there's a lot of money involved right up front, off the bat, and that's just not the case for most of us. You had mentioned before that you had encountered some predatory behavior during the process. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm glad, and that's really the biggest reason why I'm glad we're having this talk, because I don't think I did in that video, the facts of what's going on, that much justice. I think the biggest thing is really what I just spoke on. Really, this assumption that everything that happens in this industry comes at a premium cost, and that is just ridiculous. And we're doing our job to challenge that against standard business practices. So I think from a just from a visible standpoint, that's the biggest thing. Kind of in the shadowy part of it. I mean, there's just a lot of toxicity in the people that you deal with. And
Give me an example.
give you an example. Let's see here.
Probably more so of the green tax. I think because that is something that is more specific to cannabis. You're going to encounter shady, opportunistic people in any business or on the street or at the grocery store, literally anywhere you go. But I would like for you to illuminate a little bit more about the part that you say you're trying to change. Like, what did you encounter? What's an example of something you encountered as it relates to the green tax?
Yeah. So, so what we've done is when we, for instance, have had to bring on third parties, they present us with terms and arrangements for what they do for business typically. And we always challenge that, like, hey, are you willing to do it at this cost? Because we're a startup. We're not this big multi-state operator. And then also, are you willing to do payment terms that are, net 30 or 60 or 90 days, something that's beneficial to us? Or we advocate for ourselves. Like, are you willing to, be paid, back end payments completely once we actually open our doors, right? So we're always trying to throw that into the conversation. So I'd say that's the biggest thing, just really trying to say, hey, like, we're new to the space. We hope to make money like the big guys, but we're not there yet. And, can you delay payment?
Has that been successful?
In some areas, yes. In some, no. I'd say the other thing that's I'm wondering, do I really want to speak on this because it's kind of sensitive? But
well, if you questioning it, then
let me think about it.
As much as I'd like the tea, I don't want you to get yourself in trouble.
So, yeah, I'll reserve the right to speak on the specific thing that I'm thinking on.
Okay, we'll move on from that. How are you? We've mentioned money a couple of times. Like, how are you raising money for your business?
So we're raising money by. So we started with friends and family, and then we're tapping our personal networks, and we're also working with some institutional investors. So I'd say that's really it.
Okay. Have you applied for any of the state funding or the state loan program?
Yeah. So we're also that would be one of the institutional investors. Unfortunately,
well, that's a loan. That's not an investment. They want you to pay that money back.
That's an investment. It's a form of investment. A loan is a form of investment.
Okay, I'll take it.
The state program, though, for whatever reason, I think it's because of the schedule for when they awarded licenses, that they've put dispensaries on the back burner. And I don't know what their capacity is to process this stuff, but
yeah,
I don't even
slow.
Yeah, we don't even have like a application published to do it for dispensaries yet.
Oh, that's right.
So,
Actually, I know that. I'm sorry.
We're reaching out to them all the time, and we're not,
I literally just had this conversation yesterday. I do know that. And to be clear, an investment is not the same as a loan, because an investment, someone is giving you money expecting to get a return on that in exchange, and also some stake in your business, versus if somebody's giving you a loan, you pay them their money back plus the interest, and then they can go on about their business. They don't have any, you're not beholden to them, versus like a stakeholder that they're going to expect you to keep making a return on their investment. They don't necessarily
Yeah,
cash out
we could argue the
at the end of
semantics
it.
of that, but I'm almost certain that an investment is, could be either equity or debt investment in an
Okay.
entity, and then you get a return either way. Just the form of the return changes, right? So
Okay.
in a debt instrument or a loan is a debt instrument. The return is has a cap on it, and it isn't. It's different than equity in that way.
Okay.
Equity is a form of investment tool.
Okay. I just never hear anybody refer to it in that way, as the state like investing in your business. Um, what do you think? So, if you are once you are successful and you've successfully opened your business, you will become a competitor to PharmaCann. And one of the, I guess, like the word on the street, or some of the stuff that kind of floats around out in the streets, is that the multi-state operators do not want social equity um, licensees such as yourself to be successful, or that they put up roadblocks in helping them to get stood up. Do you feel like that factors into anything as it relates to how much PharmaCann is willing to help you? How are they supporting you in this process?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, because this is one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about when we were talking about predatory behavior. Because I want to say, conversely, PharmaCann, because of those paradigms that exist in people's mind, they have made it a point to not deploy a whole lot of money on our behalf, outside of really almost the minimum requirements in the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, for them to have a program like this, for them to gain the right to get additional licensing, right? So instead, they've taken a position that they'd rather deploy in-kind services or intellectual property, and they don't ultimately want to take a equity stake in our business at all. They really want to empower us to do this and for us to do our thing, and ultimately, I think their perspective on it is in line with the intent of the legislation to bring new, young, social equity demographic people into the industry. And I think they are very aware of this, and there is a real impact on how that plays into our business relationship with them.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then, there is ultimately the fact that we'll be their competitor, and we have real conversations about, like, at what point, how does our relationship change over time?
Right.
We have that conversation not regularly, but when needed. And, at some point we're not going to be involved with them, but from the onset, they committed. Their commitment to us was that they want to see us, if we win a license, open our doors and stand up a successful cannabis dispensary. So I think that's kind of where
Were
it
you
ends
all
for us.
were you all the only ones? How many teams did they incubate?
So they ended up incubating 2. The other business did not ultimately win a dispensary license. They did, though, win a transportation license. We applied for a transportation license. We did not win one. So yeah.
They helping you with that application? Was PharmaCann helping you with that one too, or that was just
Yeah. I'd say with that one, though, it was again just a lot of work on that we had to do on our own. And I'll say that in the original, I guess the challenge with that particular application is that they helped us, but you got to imagine the multi-state operators, when the medical program was rolled out, they were allowed to transport their own product from B2B,
Right.
and this transportation segment is a new component to the industry. So you could imagine like there's just not as much content for them to provide to us
Oh, I
about
understand.
around that. So
Hmm.
anyway, they did help us because there's still knowledge there, but it's different.
Got you. I understand that. Yeah, they didn't have to apply. They didn't even now they don't have to apply for that. Um, so as we're coming to an end, I would love for you to share um any like lessons learned. Is there anything that you would do differently or anything you would change about your approach? Where do you go from here? Just, some of that as we're getting towards the end of our time.
Well, quite frankly, I love PharmaCan, but Cresco gave their award winners in their incubation program $500,000 a piece after they won the
Did
license.
they?
So uh, it would be great. But anyway, no, there's not really anything that I would change. I think our decision to work with PharmaCan as opposed to the Crescos of the world or any other program, because we spoke with those teams and had those opportunities. We wanted to work with a company that had that narrower focus, and we thought that would increase our opportunity to be successful. I don't want to put so much on like this thing between us and PharmaCan. Ultimately, it was
You
a lot
brought
of
that
us.
up. I
Yeah,
ain't
I
bring
did.
that
I
up.
did because I don't have.
I said, what lessons you learned and what would you do differently?
Yeah,
And you
because
said what you said.
yeah, I was just trying to bring a little humor into it, and
Mm.
but yeah, I think we've executed on our business plan. We're maintaining a stance that we're going to be a small team and leverage the resources available to us to the best of our ability to build an economic engine that is beneficial to us and really challenge what's going on in this industry. And when we're able to do that, which I have full confidence still that we'll be able to do that, then we become a model that can work with different groups and kind of show different social equity and really you know black people that have been negatively affected in this industry who want to participate, that there's a way you can do this and do it smartly. So yeah, I don't have a whole lot of. There's not a lot that I would do, that we could have done differently, because I think we are really good as a team at getting together and evaluating all the information in front of us and making good business decisions.
Mm. If you could tell the state legislators anything, as it relates to maybe how to make this process better, or yeah, how what would you say to them?
Oh, okay. So the biggest issue right now for us is we are having difficulty with citing, and it's not because of lack of effort and work and talking to municipalities and trying to get things going and working with brokers and trying to explore the inventory in our region. There's just a lack of opportunity. So you know I definitely challenge the state to consider extending the timeline that's been determined for us to actually find a location. Although we've received an extension, you know, that hasn't yet been completely formalized on paper, which is something that might help us, right, with some of the things that we're doing. But ultimately, the real thing that they could do is extend the timeline. Um,
How much time do you have left for those who don't know about the timeline? So you get the conditional license, you have a certain amount of time. What is it, 6 months or a year to actually get it stood up and running?
yeah, so the original duration is a year. Uh, the extension gives you another, or I'm sorry, the original duration is 6 months to find a site, and then you could extend that to a year to find a site. So we have until July to find a site. 17th by my calculation. Um, Again, though, that we had a site finalized, and ultimately an ordinance was passed that allowed for cannabis in this particular county, but it didn't allow for the site that we selected to um for us to build a dispensary there.
Mhm.
So now we have to find another site, whether it be in that county or somewhere else. We have to deal with the real possibility that we might not be able to close a deal on a piece of property in just a few months, right? Even if we found a site tomorrow, we still got to get through lease negotiations and everything else. So, I mean, who knows if we can do that, right? And it's not all just on us. These business processes take time. And we're putting the time in, but it's just,
So we need them to release the dispensary applications for the state loan program, and we need them to give another extension for dispensary conditional licensees to find their locations, and to make that automatic would be great also if they didn't have to actually apply for it. But we definitely need some help in that regard from at the state level. Is there anything that you would tell, we had a bunch of people. Actually, I don't know if it was a bunch of people or not. I haven't heard much about it, but some people just submitted uh, applications for the newest round of dispensary licenses that's going on. I think there's like 50 of them that are coming up. Um, their process is a little bit different than what yours was, but is there any advice or anything that you would tell them? Any lessons learned? I know you said you wouldn't do anything differently, but are there any lessons learned that you would give them now?
Yeah, so we applied, right? We want to get more licenses. We honestly felt after the first, round of licenses that we put together a strong application, and I don't want to say should have won more licenses, but we were capable of winning more licenses. It's a lottery, right? So you don't know what's going to happen. Uh I'll say, you know, advice I'd give to them. I'd say, do the math. I think it's a little bit different. And this is, I guess, me really giving good game here. Um, I mentioned earlier that our team in the first round, we applied for licenses in every region because there was no limit on how many licenses you could apply for. And the more applications you put in across more regions, the more chances that gave you to get a license. So if you were to take away from conversation that you could do that in this scenario, that'd be wrong, right? Like you can only apply for one. And then the math around where is the best region to apply is, who knows where, right? So I just say, think about that before you decide where you want to apply. Understand that probably most people are going to want to apply in Chicagoland region. Is that really where you want to be? And then that's really it. But the first part of the application is pretty straightforward. If you can put together a team that meets the criteria, great. Then I'd say my other piece of advice was don't put an application in and waste the state's time. I did the application. So, this is kind of a ship that sailed, even though I'm answering this question. I hope what didn't happen is that a whole bunch of people applied that actually can't meet those criteria because the state just asked, like, do you have an ownership group that can actually meet this social equity criteria? So they're gonna have to process a whole bunch of application, and no telling if the people.
Well, and I want to steer it away from that because you're right, that ship has sailed. That's water under the bridge. But at some point, there's going to be a lottery, and 50 teams are going to have a conditional dispensary license.
Okay.
And then they will have to, instead of writing their application on the front end, they just going to have to create the plans and do the things on the back end.
Yeah. Okay.
So day one, like, yay, you won, you hit the lottery, boom. What we do day one, what are some lessons learned at that point?
Okay.
Because let's assume success, right? What are you gonna do? You probably gonna do something different. Let's say you win. If you win the license this time, what you gonna do perhaps that's different from when you won the last time? or
Okay.
what lesson have you
Yeah.
learned that will inform how you approach it this time?
Well, I'll address the first part.
Okay.
My advice to companies that might get a license that didn't have to do all that application work like the last rounds had to do. I'd say have some level of business plan prepared already. If you can't, try to have it all done as much as you can. I mean, people's resources are people's resources, so you can only do what you can do. But as the more work you can do before you even have that license, if you can have it at, because the application ultimately is what you have to operate against when you actually change from a conditional license to an adult use license.
Sure.
So for us, we already have all these plans and um I'm saying plans, but really that's it. Business plans,
Yeah.
operation plans,
Exhibits. Yeah.
and then sub plans, right? Like business
Sure.
plans, operation plans, um, uh, community engagement plans. We have all this stuff that's going to help us build out the business that you may not have if you just had to apply based on demographic group, right? So the more of that stuff that you could prepare ahead of time,
Sure.
the better position you'll be in to hit the ground running and then start focusing on siting, because that's going to take a lot of time and you're going to have obstacles. There's going to be communities that maybe don't want you, and there's already going to be dispensaries online, so the inventory is even more limited, right? So you're going to have to spend time on that. So I mean, if you could have all those plans and everything that you'll have to put together to prove to, because this is going to be a part of your proof to the state to actually get the conditional license, as I understand the process. Once you get the
You got to show progress.
yeah, you got to show progress.
Yes.
So, I mean, as much of that stuff that you can get done now before you get it, the better position you'll be in. But
I like that.
real
And I would
smart.
say the business plan part is something that they can be working on from now until like before the lottery even happens. You should have some kind of an idea. You can look up templates, business plan templates, and even from the simplest to the most complicated business plan, but it gives some thought to how are you going to operate and market and fund this business. Give some thought to the nitty gritties of that business plan. I think that's a great idea. I think that's something that I have definitely looked for and admired in teams that have been successful. So having a clear vision of what you want that business to be. If somebody wanted to invest or help you or reach out to you or become a part of your journey, if they believe in the vision and what you're saying, how might they reach you? First of all, let's be clear that we give the name again of your company. So it's
Yeah, it's so the company that won the license is Lighthouse Dispensing Company. Our actual store might have a different name, but that's the name currently.
okay.
You can reach me at Cyrus Cyrus .Crosby Crosby 0214 at gmail.com. I'm not on social media right now. I'm head down focused on getting this business operational. So yeah, that's really it. That's really it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your experience with us today. Hopefully, there were some nuggets and gems and just some pieces of your journey that others can use to kind of help them along the way. I'd certainly want to encourage you to stay involved in the local cannabis community, Chicago Normal, Cannabis Equity Illinois Coalition, Scene Social Equity Empowerment Network, as well as a couple others in Illinois minority cannabis business owners. There are a lot of resources out there that can be helpful to you, and certainly that as a community, if we work with unity, we can kind of help each other, and so we don't have to necessarily make these mistakes ourselves. We can learn from other people's mistakes. So I look forward to seeing you out and about in some of the industry stuff. Um, That's all for Talking Loud Urban Cannabis Conversations. Thank you for joining us. Stay tuned to intellectualradio.com for more information and formal announcements on the actual formal launch of Talking Loud Urban Cannabis Conversations and what that schedule will be. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Goodbye.
It's just to show a hater that they still a hater. You's a living legend and emancipator. You so live, you create a player. I mean, you the reason that I'm getting paper. You the I should carry some toilet paper just to wipe me down.